Right, welcome back to Just Another Solar Podcast with Luke Beattie. That's me, Karl Jensen. G'day, Karl.
That's me, Luke, and I don't need to give you a weather report this week because you're upstairs in my house.
That's right, mate. Normally from here, I introduce industry legend Nigel Morris. I don't know where in the world he is, but g'day, Nige, and he might drop into the episode. We'll find out. But in his place, we have up-and-coming industry legend Jess MacPherson. Hey, Jess.
Hey, Luke, you always gas me up. It's, and just by the way, it's very muggy here in Adelaide, just so you know.
But you've been locked down this week, locked in the house.
I have been, yes. I've been quite ill. I had a dose of the vid, but we're over it. We're moving on. We're up and at 'em for silly season.
We've seen full of beans, so yeah. That's great. And there's been a lot of news going on. For those who follow the media at all, you'd see that Parliament had their last sitting since our last episode. And I think in the last sitting, they had like 30 bills they pushed through. So there was the contentious social media bill around children under 16 not being able to use it, and also all of us having to be registered via ID or biometrics. That was all in the media. But at the same time, the Future Made in Australia bill passed. I know the Smart Energy Council and the Australian Manufacturing Working Group I'm in, which includes Rod Scott from Selectronic, who's the chair, and Lee Heaney, have been heavily involved in giving some advice to government and relevant departments about this, and it passed, which is a huge thing for Australian manufacturing. So congrats to all those involved. Got through at the last minute, and that's some really good news. And there was a massive milestone as well, Karl, for solar installs.
4 million houses in Australia now have solar, apparently, which is fantastic. That's a great number. It means that there's another 8 million to go.
But Jess, sometimes companies take it even further. What have you seen out there?
I thought that this was fake news. I had to double check that it wasn't some AI image just for the laughs, but I did see that a certain well-known crap solar provider has added massage chairs into their lineup. Which I don't know, I like good self-consumption, I guess, trying really hard to find a silver lining, but maybe not the direction that we're talking about when we say like diversify.
We're talking economic benefits. Instead of having to fly to Bali for a massage, you can get one in your own living room, electrified.
Oh, for sure, 100%. Look,
carbon neutral massages.
That's absolutely stunning. The emission savings there for Luke, just humongous.
Look, I'm really trying. Like, imagine you're on Amber and you can get paid to have a massage because you're doing it at the right time of day where the spot price is negative. Like, there's probably something there, but I just thought it was really quite funny.
I was chatting to Roy from Pleco at a Smart Energy Conference roadshow in Perth a couple of nights ago, which was awesome, by the way. Jeff Bragg, another great job, talking about AS4777 and the hot topic of bidirectional charging. In WA, Pleco's been involved in VPPs and some of the trials that have been going on there, and arguably would have one of the bigger VPP fleets in Australia. And speaking to him, it's not just about having the batteries ready to dispatch, it is about having loads that are able to be switched on, including hot water and all this other stuff. So imagine if you get a critical mass of massage chairs, when there's a glut of energy on the grid, you get the alert, jump in the chair. Have you been in one?
Me? No, yeah. I get paid the medium fish bucks, not the big fish bucks. They take good care of me, but not that good a care of me.
I can.
And in the time we've been talking about massage chairs, industry legend Nigel Morris has dropped in. G'day, Nige.
G'day, everyone. So sorry I had a little distraction that I had to deal with, but I'm here now and good to see everyone.
Normally before the episode, we'll sit there for 5 minutes and just jot down some of the points that we might talk about and news points, but you're on a hot mic, Nige. What have you got?
Well, I think there's two things in mind for me. Number one, AEMO's big announcement this week. Don't know if you guys have mentioned that already, but, the entire nation is heading towards backstop next year. Interesting to watch the debate going online. Personally, putting aside the business interests that I obviously have in that because we can do it, I think it is just a wonderful thing for us to be moving from dumb solar to smarter dynamic solar. It means bigger systems can be installed. It means more solar can be installed. It means more batteries can be installed. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing, as painful as the road is. So that's one big thing. And then
quick on that, Nige, before you jump into it.
Yeah.
If we're all going to be going to CCIP Oz, how long until we get standardised testing? so we don't have to do separate testing by state, by network?
Oh, well, that's the million-dollar question. And, I know there's a number of fairly vigorous conversations going on around the traps at the moment about that very issue. And I'm involved in some of them. And I think the good thing about AEMO getting involved is they're making a federal edict. So they're saying to the DNSPs, you all have to do this. And I know from conversations with AEMO already that they are desperately trying to get national consistency. And I'm hoping that this edict is a wonderful, wonderful mechanism to actually get that in place and sort out some of the nuances. Second point is I'm very excited because tomorrow is the AGM for Rainbow Power Company, our old friends who've been on the show. My old friends where I started in solar 32 years ago. It's their annual general meeting, and I'm excited to be heading up to my old stomping ground in Nimbin and visiting them for that.
On the live wire?
Sadly, I'm jumping on a plane and zipping up and then zipping back. So it's going to be a big, quick trip for me. But there's an AGM in the morning and then a Christmas party in the afternoon. So there's a one-day conference on psilocybin on the day of the AGM and Christmas party. So who knows when I'll see you again.
I was going to say, shouldn't it be a 3-day conference?
So Nigel's bat signal is psychedelic mushrooms and massage chairs. Is that what we're learning today?
Welcome to a solar podcast. All right, Nigel, you made it just in time because we've got an excellent guest today who covers a couple of big facets in the industry. So today we've got Imraan Thanawalla from Solaris Finance and Solar Nerds. I receive Solar Nerds updates and the data, and I know almost everyone in the industry does. So I don't know how he's built such a database, but he can speak to finance, he can speak to data, and he's an excellent bloke. So welcome to the podcast, Imraan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So for those who don't know you, can you just give us a quick brief about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so Imraan, I am the managing director of Solaris Finance. So we're a financier of specifically solar, residential, commercial, and stock purchases as well. And we also own the trademark to Solar Nerds, which is probably what most people know us for. Solar Nerds publishes, amongst other things, but what we're most known for is publishing data on the industry that's free for everyone. But we're also extending that content into other areas like industry training and consumer content or consumer advice.
And awards. I saw you doing awards now.
And awards, yeah. So whoever's on the top of the list of the leaderboards of our stats gets awards. There's no, it's not a pay per play thing. It's everything's free. So yeah, we're handing out awards now too.
It's quite interesting because finance is very different to aggregating data and representing data to industry. So where's the bridge between the two?
Yeah, it's there is a bridge, but admittedly, it's not as seamless as you might think. It's not a perfect Venn diagram, if you will. Basically, with finance, it's unlike solar, right? So finance, we're not selling one product to a customer and then moving on to the next one where we're trying to form a relationship with retailers. And the main way that you can form a relationship with the retailer is to stay front of mind. You can do that through push marketing where you just keep calling people, which is what most companies do. Or you can do that through pull marketing, which is, give people some sort of content that they like to absorb and let them come to you when they're ready because they remember who you are, that's the idea behind Solar Nerds. Yeah, to provide content that people actually like, right?
Imraan, I'll jump in here because I have to say, having in a former life more than a decade ago, I used to trawl the market for such data, and it was a tedious and mind-numbing exercise, but it was incredibly valuable because years gone by, the industry suffered from not having access to any of this kind of data, and now, lo and behold, here we are, decades later, and we've now got a commercial company like yourself who's found a way to get access to that data and get it up and make it available for everybody's benefit, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. The challenge particularly with the industry data has always been that there are gaps in it mostly because of aggregators. It still gives you a really good sense of what's going on, but there is always some gaps. Roughly what percentage of the market do you reckon you're catching and being able to break apart, putting aside what's captured by the aggregators, where it's it's one entity who might represent several hundred solar installers.
It's anybody's guess, right? How much business these aggregators have. In terms of total market share, we can see, I don't want to name names, but some of the big players that everybody knows have, 30, 40% market share of the whole solar industry. However, how many individual retailers are in and amongst that is a mystery. It'd be awesome to know, because that is the gap in our data. Our total data of how much is totally installed throughout a month, throughout a year, over the years is all correct, or it's an estimation, but it's correct. Whereas the leaderboards
that's based on STC registrations, presumably.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it's good to take a step back there. So the source of the data, which is, I'm probably shooting myself in the foot here, but hey, everyone can look at our source. If you go onto our website, below any of our charts, the CER's website is listed there, specifically the API that is public for everyone, and that classifies STCs by action. So when an STC is created, when an STC is registered, when it's bought, sold, surrendered. So all of that data is there. So there's actually, our database is much bigger than just the installations that we post on the website. The data point that we specifically go into is STC registered, because that's what we feel is when a solar install is, you can justifiably call it an installation. So that's the only one that we actually focus on, whereas the database is bloody huge with all sorts of transactions with STCs.
And you do end up with some discrepancy between your data, Sunwiz data, and a couple of other mobs who do a similar thing. So that explains a little bit through the aggregators. What's another reason for some of the differences in the data that we see?
Yeah, it's a good question. I can have my guesses, but again, we don't know what other companies are doing with their data. One reason could be how you're calculating the zones, right? Because the zones don't really align up with the states, and in the STC data, the Clean Energy Regulator only give you the state. So if something is in Western Australia, I mean, you could assume it's in Perth, and that's what we assume for the installations, but you don't know how many of those installations are in Broome or in Perth.
Oh, right? You assume it's Perth. You've seen how big WA is.
Yeah, you've got to pick one point. So we picked the capital.
So you just get the by state data. You don't get postcodes or anything like that.
So you do get postcode data, but it's a separate data set. The STC data that most of our website is based on, that is based on the STC data, and in that specific transaction, you only get the state. They're trying to protect consumers' privacy, which is obviously a good thing.
How accurate do you think the battery data is?
No, I don't think the battery data is accurate at all. It's the stuff that the CER publishes is incomplete data. So from my understanding, and you guys, I feel, are the real solar nerds. I feel like I'm an imposter calling myself a solar nerd. But in any case, the data, the battery data that CER publishes is what they say. They say it's incomplete. So because it's an optional thing you can tick on your STC assignment form to say that a battery was installed. So it's not a mandatory field, right?
And
so
Imraan, sorry, I was going to say, and it wouldn't include any retrofits that are battery only. Like anyone adding a Powerwall 2 on that hasn't claimed any STCs, none of that's going to show up, right? And exactly. How many batteries is that? Probably a majority, right?
Exactly. There is in New South Wales, like with the perks, I don't pronounce that right, but the New South Wales battery rebate, now that's gone live, we might have some New South Wales data that's reliable, but we haven't been comfortable putting anything out for batteries nationally at this stage, just because, I don't want to put out data just for the sake of putting out data.
So would the only way to actually acquire that data be through like the DNSP registers of battery installations? Not including off-grid, of course.
No, I assume so. We haven't found a reliable way to do it ourselves, but yeah.
Definitely a bit of art in all of this. It's a real shame, actually, because some countries publish this data and manufacturers and suppliers are required to supply it, which gives the industry a great sense of actually what's going on, and it helps the policymakers too. So it's a bit frustrating for many, many years, but it's great that at least you're doing what you can. I'm interested in switching gears from what the data is a little bit to what's happened this year. You're sitting on all that data. You've no doubt looked at it many, many times. We're close to the end of the year. We're in the run to the finish line right now. Where have we got to so far? And, for the sake of it, let's just focus on the STC market and the small scale rooftop stuff, which is what most of us are all interested in. Where have we got to this year? Is it now I'm going to step back a bit because my boss lambasted me this week. So your questions on the podcast are so long and complicated.
And it gets your word count up too. Your word count. When we look at your word count, Karl's word count, maybe that's where the difference is, Nigel. The difference is in your questions.
Has this year been above or below expectation?
It depends on whose expectation, I guess, right? But we should beat next year, not comfortably, but it looks like we're going to beat last year's. So we're going to beat last year's numbers. Sentiment, and you guys can probably speak to this as well, is that numbers are supposed to be down, right? So I actually had a bit of a panic attack at the start of the year. Everyone telling us that the numbers are down, it's looking bad. And when I looked at my data, I'm like, oh, my data must be wrong. They're going to catch me as a fraud. I need to really look into this. Got all the tech guys to do a full bug check and had a look at what others were posting as well. And it seems not exact, but quite consistent. So it seems to me that the market has, been flooded with more and more competition. So maybe the total numbers are going up, which they are. But there's a lot more players in the market sharing that volume. But in answer to your original question, we should see a single-digit growth from last year. Nothing. We're not smashing it out of the park, but it's still growth nonetheless. Maybe we're spoilt after having so many 50 to 100% growth years that a measly 5% doesn't seem like growth.
I remember watching a live podcast at All Energy, I think it was last year or perhaps the year before, an industry legend speaking to an expert in industry, making a case that the forecasts are for the industry to stay around that 3 gigawatt mark ongoing to 2050. And the point being that you get saturation, but then you also have system replacement. So floating around that 3 gigs seems to be where the market's going to be. And I think Nigel, that was you, obviously. And just going off memory, I think that was the data that also the DNSPs and the networks and AEMOs using as well.
Yeah, correct. That was based on the STC projections that are done each year by Rip Resolve for the Clean Energy Regulator. He's one of a number of consultants that does projections for them, has done for many, many years.
I'm sure there's going to be a short-term dip in Victoria. Anyone who's on the ground, whilst backstop got implemented on the 1st of October, there was essentially a month's worth of work that were in people's pipelines where they could still install systems that they had network approvals for that didn't have backstop. But in the last couple of weeks, that's really snowballed. Now everything's into backstop and it's slowing down installers a lot of tech support time, a lot of time with third parties like you, Nigel, at Solar Analytics, and a lot of time with the network operators, which is slowing things down a bit.
New South Wales as well with the battery rebate, right? The market, we could see it in the data that the market had really come off the boil. So what was the answer to that one, Imraan? Where do you reckon we're going to land?
Well, you were correct. 3.3. We'll see at the end of the year, but it looks like you've been looking at my data more than I have. We're at 2.997 at the moment, and we get 250, maybe 300 in a good month. December's usually a good month, so that would be 3.3 would be a good guess, I reckon.
So let's change gear then. We've been talking about data and solar nerds. Can you just give us a quick brief on how Solaris Finance came to be before we jump into some of the finance-related stuff?
Yeah, sure. So Solaris Finance is about 9 years old now. Basically, I used to work at the bank, Macquarie Bank, for about 5 years. Sick of the politics, couldn't really work in an organization like that. So I decided to do the only thing I knew how to do, which was finance. And I did we were playing around in solar while I was at the bank, and I really liked that space specifically because, and we'll talk more about this moving forward, but financing solar compared to financing another asset is it makes more sense, right? If you can structure it in a way where the savings from the solar are greater than the repayment for the finance, then it's cash flow positive and you're saving money without actually having to put money down. That made a lot of sense to me, which is why I jumped into this market specifically.
Certainly got to be better for your bank balance than financing a car.
Depends on the car, maybe, Karl.
All cars are depreciating assets. We know that.
I would say as well, Imran, we talk a lot about, like, if your return on investment or your term for your repayments is, say, 5 years, just to use a round number, if you were going to be giving that money to AGL or Origin or whoever anyway, you may as well put it into your house. Like, it's just way better for your resale value, or just for your feeling good about what you're doing with that money. You know, it's a really strong point to customers to make them feel really good about a purchase that's going to be amazing for them.
Yeah, 100%. If they're not going anywhere anytime soon, and they can't pay for the system in cash, then I would argue it makes more sense to finance it than do nothing, so long as it's cash flow positive, of course. You want them to be saving.
Well, you can multiply those savings by adding an electric car, right? So every kilowatt hour you put into your car saves you $1 in petrol. Sure, petrol's come down a little bit and doesn't apply to Nigel. I mean, bike, when I talk Nigel, every kilowatt hour that he puts in his bike probably saves him 50 cents in petrol. Then again, it is a Harley, so it's probably still $1.
Now let's talk about interest-free. We
Yes.
see so many solar quotes that come out, and this often comes up online, where there's solar companies going out there and being very disingenuous about interest and fees. So they're saying it's interest-free, but then when you sink the cost of all the fixed fees and admin fees and so on, it ends up being more than that. I'll use an example. I had some friends get into the Thermomix cult, and they came and said, $2,500 or whatever the number was for this $500 appliance, and they're awesome. Don't get me wrong. Thermomixes are great. Interest-free. So just sign up and pay it as you go. So I said, can I actually see the contract? So I looked at the contract in terms of fixed fees and admin fees and so forth. I worked it out to be at approximately 8%. There's people out there selling solar the same way. I think it's disingenuous. What's your take on it as a finance man?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The main complaint that you hear from the industry is about that part, that disingenuous part. We're telling the customer that it's 0%, however, it's not really 0%. And I would argue that's not the worst thing about buy now, pay later. Buy now, pay later was born to be a loophole around the NCCP, or National Consumer Credit Protection, right? Which is the laws that mean that, anytime that anyone's borrowing money for personal reasons, whether it be, $5,000 for a solar system or $5 million for some waterfront property, there is certain checks and balances that you need to do. So the fact that buy now, pay later gets around that is arguably, I guess, in my opinion, the bigger thing that's wrong with it. But obviously, if you're telling a customer that something's 0%, they're believing it, then that's not good either.
On this, Imran, I don't know, I imagine you know quite a lot about the NetCC and how it relates to certain low interest loans being available to, like, from specific providers. For example, like the big banks have now made that a requirement. And like, it has a really big impact on small businesses that have to fork out for buying this logo that doesn't really mean anything else. How does Solaris feel about that side of things?
We've only ever given regulated credit out to the market, right? So personal loans, we don't have a buy now, pay later product out there. And NetCC, I don't know the exact wording, but they want regulated credit out there. And if you don't have you have an unregulated product, i.e. a buy now, pay later product, then that would need to go through them to get passed.
But didn't the buy now, pay later regulations or legislation or something change recently? I heard an announcement in the media.
Yeah, just last week, the regulation has changed. So, I mean, I don't know how soon this will be enforced. It's still really early days with this, but basically, buy now, pay later is now regulated under NCCP. They've split it out into two categories. So there's the small buy now, pay later, and there's the large buy now, pay later. So the small is like what you get through Afterpay if you're buying a T-shirt on the Iconic or whatever. That would be small, but then they've got the larger one, which most of the solar stuff will fit into. So
is there a dollar threshold for it then?
Yeah, it's either 2,000 or 3,000. I'll have to double check that. But it's definitely, like, the majority of solar installations are not going to be $2,000 to $3,000, right? They're going to be more than that. So they're going to fall under this regulation, which basically means doing a personal loan or a green loan will be the same thing as doing buy now, pay later.
So does that mean that the cheap and nasty systems out there might still fly under the radar?
Yeah, I mean they'll probably still exist, but it'll probably have a small dent. However, one thing that it will definitely affect retailers is that getting credit for your customers is going to become harder. Again, the main, I guess, talking point is that it's it's so disingenuous. We're telling the customer it's 0%, and when it's not 0%. But really, what's happening under the covers is that these loans are going through, sometimes without credit checks, sometimes without checking pay slips, because they don't need to follow the regulation, right? So that will now stop, which means that a few people that can't afford the loan, unfortunately, won't get approved, which may mean less solar sales. Yeah,
and massage chairs. I'm pretty sure they fall above the threshold too.
Depends on what kind of massage chair, right?
I don't think that's a bad thing at all, and certainly I know from my involvement with the earlier version of the CEC's approved solar retailer program, when this was a big issue on the table and the source of much debate. The number one reason was because it was the number one source of complaints from solar consumers coming to the CEC looking for help, saying, I've been stitched up, I got this deal or whatever, and I can't pay it back or whatever. So a little bit of extra consumer protection, I think, is a good thing, although there'll be some impact. The other question that always interests me around finance, and there are a lot of different finance products out there in the solar space, and it's been a long time since I did the analysis, but I was always really intrigued to try and get a sense of what percentage of the market. Sorry, I'm going to rephrase this for Scotty's benefit. Very simple question, Imraan. What percentage of the market uses finance?
So we actually did a survey, and it is still time for people to fill it in, so the results may change. And we asked retailers what percentage of their sales was on finance, and the results have come in. It's around about 30%, just underneath. So it still seems like the vast majority of sales are in cash or something else. I don't know if there's a third option, but yeah.
And a second question, if I may, also very succinct, Scotty. What's the trend doing? Are the percentage of solar buyers using finance increasing or decreasing?
That we wouldn't know. I mean, again, you could guess. In this market, we're seeing a lot more applications for finance, and that might mean that less people have cash flow lying around. It could be that our company's growing. I'm not too sure. Hopefully it's our company's growing, and hopefully it's that. But again, we don't have the proper data to give an accurate answer on that.
Well, I want to send it to Jess then, because she's the one out of our group that's actually selling retail solar, and you can't give us the data. But what's your feel on it? What's your sense, Jess?
I haven't been doing this job for a crazy long time either, so I don't want to speak for. I've been doing this job for a year basically. I feel like it swings around about. So I feel like there's some months where I do heaps and some months where I do very little. And certainly the last couple of months, I don't feel like I've done a lot. But I think even just having the conversation about it and having people be able to choose between two good options, like here's a good finance and a good. You can just pay it out front. There's no such thing as free money. So if you want to go down that path, no worries. And letting people make that informed decision is a really strong sales tool.
I want to take exception to Scotty. If we weren't long-winded and had long questions and long opinions, this thing would only go for sub 10 minutes, mate. So work with us. We're just building material. We're building content. I think you're a great dude, Scotty, but I take exception to what you said tonight.
Let's get Scotty on and see how succinct he is.
Oh, yeah, there's the challenge.
Well, he's going to blow the catch power quota for the next 6 months.
And so, Imraan, I mean, as a finance guy with finance experience, and I accept that, you don't have those long-term trends, but would it be true to say that in a macro economic climate like we've got now, consumer spending is under great pressure? I was looking at the metrics on the ABS yesterday, and there's been a slight recovery, but pretty much every metric in the economy is saying it's really tough for consumers. It's really hard for them to spend money because they've got all these other pressures on them. When we're in a macroeconomic situation like that, does the uptake of finance go up because people don't have the cash, or do they get nervous about taking on new debt as well?
Yeah, generally speaking, the uptake does go up. However, the declines also go up. One, because it is hard for consumers out there, and servicing debt becomes even more difficult. But in an environment where interest rates are higher, then all of the commitment values and all those values that we've got to put into the servicing calculations go up too. That is not your question, but the most difficult part of regulated credit is getting the customer to service. That's the hardest part, to prove that they have the funds to actually pay for the loan comfortably with buffers in place, and that really becomes hard in a market like this.
Indeed. Someone once said to me, the toughest part about getting money, or people giving you money and investing money in your business, is paying it back. And the same thing goes for borrowing money to put solar panels on your roof. Ultimately, you still got to pay it back.
And so a follow-on question then that you prompted me on, Imraan, from what you've seen, are default levels fairly consistent in this industry, so people not being able to pay the loan back?
They're a little bit higher. From feedback that we get from lenders is that it's a little bit higher. It's nothing to be alarmed about. One thing about solar, which is traditionally financiers don't like financing things like solar because it doesn't have any repossession value. However, what financiers have found is, when people are installing solar on their roof, on their homes, it almost becomes sort of not a part of their mortgage, but it treated similar to their mortgage, as this is a part of my house, this is a part of my investment. So
if they own a home, there's likely to be some collateral in the house itself. Is that what you're saying?
If they do choose to sell the house, then we're in a safe position. We can't force them to sell the house. Maybe some funders can, but most can't. However, just that feeling of a customer having solar on their roof, they generally pay it back more diligently than they would a car or something like that. That's what the numbers say anyway.
They get the savings, right? So they've suddenly got the savings that they didn't have before, which theoretically in most cases are going to service the cost of the loan. So even if they're only a little bit better off, they're still going to have $50 left over after they paid the loan out. That was the thing I always thought. The reason I always thought it made sense.
Yeah, it is definitely one of the reasons. It's funny you mentioned that, because there's some funders who won't consider the savings as part of the servicing. So even though the deal's structured as cash flow positive, the lender will, and maybe it's a good thing, they'll assume that the installer's putting a lemon on the roof, which a lot of installers probably do, and they go, all right, if there's a lemon on the roof that doesn't generate any electricity, can you still pay it back? Now, there's some funders that don't take that view and incorporate the savings, but it's a bit of a 50-50 thing at the moment. Yeah, some use it, some don't.
We're back to massage chairs again. Everyone's getting the solar, and they're straight away with their savings. They're all buying massage chairs instead of paying the loan off.
To be fair, the economics around whether that solar system will save them X amount of dollars is significantly harder to determine now. And that's because we've had a seismic shift in the amount of money that people get for a feed-in tariff. So it's really easy to work out the savings. If you get the same amount of money for the feed-in tariff as you do to buy the energy, then if your house uses 5 megawatt hours and you generate 5 megawatt hours, then that's going to be the saving. But the lower the feed-in tariff rate gets, the more motivated people are to put in those technologies where they can use that energy when they're making it. And shout out to Matthew Wright. He did a great little Instagram or YouTube video where he said, a lot of people that buy electric cars will hedge their fuel cost with their ICE car. They go to the petrol station on a Thursday, which is traditionally the cheap day. They buy an electric car and they say, right, I'm going to hedge my fuel cost. I'm going to put panels on my roof. So that economic payback is significantly tougher to work out. And of course, my thought bubble started with backstop and export limits. So we were hoping in Victoria that backstop would turn into an export limit of 10 kilowatts that was flexible. And what we've ended up with is 5 kilowatts that's flexible. So there's lots of people in the industry that are campaigning around that to get that bit sorted out to bring us in line with South Australia and New South Wales, where we've got 10 kilowatts of flexible exports. And then, of course, that makes the maths for you guys, like Imraan, to figure it out better again, rather than I've got this 13 kilowatt system on my roof that only made 2,000 kilowatt hours last year because that was the only energy that I made when I'm sitting in front of the TV and the sun was up.
Well, I'm going to correct you on one small thing, Karl. Not New South Wales yet, although it's coming. Queensland is the other place where they've got dynamic exports. And I want to throw this one in because it's just the best example. I was speaking to an installer recently who had put in an application. They would normally be allowed to put in a 5 kilowatt static limited solar system in this part of the world. They put in an application and decided to, or required to put in as a dynamic application instead of a static 5 kilowatt export limit. They waited for the response to come back, and the DNSP came back to them and said, no worries, you can put in 20 kilowatts. The retailer actually went back to the DNSP and said, I think you've made a mistake. You've said I can put 20 on. He's used to 5 with a hard limit for years and years and years. They said, no. We have not made a mistake. We need your energy a lot of the time. And so we are very happy for you to be able to deliver 20 when we want it and when we need it. And we have the ability to throttle it when it doesn't work for us. So go for your life and put 20 on. It was the single best example of all of the benefits of dynamic control playing out, because the owner wins with a 4 times larger system, the installer wins with a 4 times larger system, the network wins with energy delivered when they want it, and when they don't want it, they can throttle it. And even Imraan wins because he's now financing a system that's 4 times bigger, right? A massage chairs for everyone, I say.
Sorry, Nigel, I agree with you, but with that, when we need to turn on loads and we need to pull from the grid, I'm actually thinking I'm going to find an OEM for massage chairs.
Oh, God, I regret bringing this up at this point.
Net zero massage chairs. And if I find a suitable product, by the time I post this episode, the link will be in the notes. Give me a call, email me.
Please
netzeromassagechairs.com.au.
Well, that's exactly right. I was about to say we've given way too much advertising to a group that I will at least say do not deserve it. So get it from somewhere else, not a solar.
Look, Jess, what I'd say to that is that the rising tide lifts all the boats. So ultimately, there's plenty of fruit on the tree for everybody. And some of those big businesses do spend a lot of money on advertising. And even if they don't get sales from that advertising directly, at least it plants the seed in someone's head and they can go to somebody else. And anytime that big businesses in our industry do a lot of advertising, everybody picks up in sales. So people in regional areas notice it most. If they spend some money and do a TV ad, their competitors will have the phone ringing as well because people want to get competitive quotes.
So Imraan, we're heading into the silly season and we all get pretty busy on our side of things. And I imagine things get pretty hectic for you guys there too before the year ends. How do you take a step back from it all and keep yourself balanced?
I've actually just picked up a new hobby. I've started playing chess. Trying to slow the mind down, sit there, concentrate on one thing. I'm not very good. I'm very bad actually, but it is helping slow the chaos down that is life.
Are you taking a break over Christmas?
Yeah, we're going to New Zealand next week to see the in-laws, and then over Christmas we're going to the Philippines.
Awesome, man. We're going to wrap up shortly, so I'm going to go around and get everyone's last thoughts, and we'll start with you, Karl.
I had a record solar day before yesterday, 172 kilowatt hours out of my solar system, which is awesome. And of course, I get constantly reminded that only happens like 5 days a year. I think for the first time I've ever noticed Victoria has had more than 75% renewables on the grid. And in the news this week was that a couple of New South Wales power stations have managed to turn off their power station and fire it up again in time for the evening peak. And we haven't seen that before. So that has allowed more renewables on the grid. And I'm guessing Nigel's seen what that curtailment looks like or doesn't look like because they were able to shut down that coal-fired thing for the day. But that's exciting for our transition because we didn't think that was possible.
So, Nigel, you can pick up on that and then go to your last thought.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm going to go sideways from that one, talking about the sort of big picture of the whole national energy market and coal generation, because I don't know if this got brought up earlier, or if anyone picked it up, but Indian billionaire Gautam Adani had an arrest warrant issued for him. And it sounds like a good Netflix miniseries to me, because it all comes back to a solar energy, the Adani Solar Energy Corporation, and a bunch of 12 gigawatt solar energy projects that were supposed to yield billions of dollars. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Arrest warrants for the guy. Now, not only did they have a big push towards green energy, and they had made quite a bit of noise in Australia about doing that, but of course they're also very, very heavily in coal. So, my parting thought is watch that space. I think the Netflix doco is going to be absolutely fascinating to find out what happened there.
And Jess MacPherson, great to have you back again. I know I said that last time, but it really is. Your last thoughts?
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Love chin working with you guys. Look, my last thoughts are, I think it's, I think we're on the brighter side of things. I think it's been a really rough year for a lot of businesses, and I hope that other people are feeling what we're feeling, which is that things have really kicked into gear to finish the year strong. And I hope people are taking care of themselves going into the Christmas break. And just excited to see we're not quite there yet, but I'm almost excited for 2025 already.
Imraan Thanawalla from Solaris Finance and Solar Nerds. And if you're not subscribed to Solar Nerds, you can jump on the website. You'll get the newsletters. You can jump on there anyway and get lots of free data, which is super cool. Last thoughts from you?
Yeah, so last thoughts, watch this space when it comes to buy now, pay later and this new NCCP regulation update. I don't know how quick it'll get implemented or how quick they'll enforce it. It'll probably give these guys a bit of breathing room in order to get their house in order. But watch this space. There's big changes coming next year.
Thanks again for joining us. And thanks to you listeners. Please remember to like, subscribe, share it around to anyone who might get benefit. And we'll catch you next time.